There are a lot of different reasons to choose a banking hub, but one of the most overrated reasons is because you live there. And in this video, I'm going to share why banking where you live doesn't make sense and tell you what you should do instead. Now, in case this is the first time we've met, my name is Chris. I'm the head of banking relationships at GlobalBanks. We help investors, entrepreneurs, and businesses solve cross-border banking problems, and that often means helping people determine the best countries to open bank accounts. Now, let me just start by saying I'm talking to people who left their home country, acquired residency, multiple residencies, even multiple citizenships. And in a lot of cases, they have cross-border families and businesses with ties on multiple continents. And this is the sort of people that typically come to GlobalBanks looking for help navigating cross-border banking and financial services. Now, if you're one of these people, I'm not telling you to completely stop banking in countries where you spend time, either as a resident, citizen, or even as a tourist. In fact, we strongly suggest having bank accounts in these countries to reduce costs, pay local expenses, and even establish ties where necessary. But we refer to these accounts as transactional accounts. They exist to support your lifestyle, day-to-day spending, and basically just make it easier for you to function when you're on the ground. Though a lot of the heavy lifting can be done through international credit cards that offer zero foreign transaction fees and no markup on currency exchange. This all plays into the idea of banking stacks, which is something that we came up with to help our clients construct a more intentional strategy for their cross-border banking and financial services. I'm actually going to be digging into this topic in a future video, so if you have any interest in how we think through cross-border banking and deciding which services to access in which countries, make sure you subscribe so you get alerted when we publish that video. Okay, now like I said, if you're looking to open a transactional bank account, then go ahead and open local accounts wherever you're a citizen, resident, or even a frequent visitor. But chances are you're not a resident or citizen of an established banking hub, and it's even less likely that you're a citizen or resident of one of the best banking jurisdictions in the world. Instead, most people, they are citizens and residents of countries with mediocre banking, limited functionality, and where governments and creditors can quickly freeze and seize accounts. So why would you bank there? Or rather, why would you keep all of your money there? I talk to friends about this all the time, guys with 3 or 4 passports and multiple residencies who bank in places that frankly would keep me up at night. And their only justification for doing so is because they live there or they own businesses there. But that's a lazy response. So let's walk through the reasons you should not bank where you live. And the first reason that we're going to discuss is diversification. Now, diversification, it's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot in international circles. Diversify risk, diversify wealth, diversify income, etc., etc. But when it comes to banking, what we're really talking about is spreading out your money or investments across a number of different financial institutions, ideally in different jurisdictions. And you might do this to reduce the impact of a wide range of different risks, including political, economic, legal, or even the risk of military conflict. And these are all variables that we consider when looking at different banking hubs for our clients. And we regularly caution people about opening accounts in specific places due to these risks, whether it's the possible aggression from a neighbor like Russia, the risk of economic collapse, which would undermine the banking sector, or a massive shift in political sentiment that can impact monetary and fiscal policy, undermining the local currency and deposits held at banks. But it's not just international jurisdictions that face these risks. The places where you're a citizen, resident, or plan to obtain citizenship and residency also face these risks. And if you're looking to reduce the impact that any one jurisdiction can have over you or your money, you should probably be looking at diversifying your finances and banking in multiple countries, especially countries where you don't live. Okay, putting risk aside, let's talk about one of the most popular and most misunderstood topics in banking, which is privacy. And yes, privacy is one of the main reasons why you should consider banking outside of your home country. Again, have a local transactional account, support day-to-day spending. But if you have any meaningful amount of money, do you really want your cousin's best friend who's a teller at your local bank knowing what kind of balance you hold in the account? Probably not. But I do need to make this clear. I'm talking about privacy, not secrecy. And as I've said in the recent non-CRS video, information sharing conventions like CRS, AEOI, FATCA, EOIR, MAAC, all of these programs, as well as many country-to-country programs, ensure that your information is going to be shared, either automatically or on request, depending on the country. My point is, privacy doesn't mean your information is totally confidential, but it can add an extra layer of protection for you, your family, and your money. That way, your personal information isn't freely available to anyone at your local credit union or commercial bank. And that brings us to our next reason that you should never bank where you live, which is security. What I'm talking about here is taking care of yourself and your family, and I'm not just referring to financial security. If you don't live in a Western democracy, the US, Canada, Australia, UK, EU, then there's a real chance that privacy is an even more important consideration, because in a lot of places, corruption and crime are still out of control. And that means anyone can easily pay off bank employees to find out who has the largest account at the bank and where they live. And again, that might sound crazy if you live in a developed Western country, but I can tell you that people from all over Africa, Central and Eastern Europe, Southeast and Central Asia, and Latin America see variations of this everywhere in society. And it's why lots of people from these regions open international accounts in reputable jurisdictions with reputable banks, not only to access these international banking options, but to protect themselves and their families from theft, extortion, blackmail, even kidnapping. In those places, banking offshore, it's not a luxury, it's an insurance policy to make sure that no one can completely leverage you. Okay, now the next reason that you shouldn't bank where you live is because you don't have to. At the start of this video, I mentioned that you're probably not a citizen or resident of one of the best banking hubs out there. But maybe you are. Maybe you live in Singapore, Switzerland, Monaco, Jersey, or even the Cayman Islands. And these are places with excellent banks, strong bank regulators, and sophisticated bankers that can cater to most clients across the wealth spectrum. But even if you do live in these countries, it doesn't mean you need to bank in them. And it doesn't mean that you won't do something one day to upset the regulators, local politicians, or even the banks. Canada made itself the poster child for this when the Trudeau government decided to freeze accounts during COVID protests, enacting emergency powers and effectively cutting off protesters from their money. And while there are plenty of other countries around the world that go to these lengths to control protests, none of those places can credibly claim to be developed, democratic, or open. But Canada is supposed to be all of those things, and is supposed to be an example for how other countries operate and treat their citizens. But instead, they gave us one of the worst examples of a developed country forcing its citizens to fall in line with government mandates over the last 50 years. And it's probably a big reason why so many Canadians are now opening international and offshore bank accounts today, just in case. The point is, if account freezes can happen in Canada to people who contributed to protests against government mandates, then account freezes can definitely happen in your country. And that's exactly why you shouldn't bank where you live. Now, if you want to see the 5 places that we think are worth considering for international and offshore banking right now, including how much you need to deposit in order to access them, you can find all of that information and a lot more right here. On the other hand, if you're ready to start opening international accounts, you can go to globalbanks.com/insider to see if you qualify for our account opening services. But before you do, don't forget to hit that subscribe and that like button, and I'll see you in the next video.